For both of us on the panel here, we're at some strange other time.
It's really cruel to give the American a morning slot. I mean, it's really cool.
But I'm incredibly pleased to be here interviewing Courteney Monroe, the CEO of National Geographic, which is embarked on one of the biggest and most interesting experiments in American and global television at the moment. And we just saw that fantastic brand reel, and we're going to hear about Courteney's plans and how you got to where you are now.
Great.
Can I just remind everybody that you have the option through your app, which I hope you all downloaded, of asking questions, which I'll be able to see here. We'll also go to other questions at the end. I also just wanted to quickly thank the British Film Commission and Creative Scotland for their support of this session. So, Courteney.
Hi, Jane.
Hi there. We should explain that the two of us work together all the time.
Yes.
And so that whereas I was talking to some other people who are doing some sessions and they're like, I've never ever met the person before that I'm interviewing. I think we were on the phone about 4 times last week.
Yeah.
So there's a level of informality about this session. But perhaps a very good place to start is how you came to end up being the CEO of National Geographic.
Yeah, sure. I'm very grateful to be the CEO of National Geographic, and I run the television business specifically. So I live in Washington, D.C., where you live too, and it's actually where I grew up, and never thought I would return as an adult. Certainly didn't expect to have a professional career in Washington. There's not a lot of television in Washington, D.C. anymore. So I was in New York, and I ran marketing for HBO in New York, and I pretty much thought it was the greatest job on the planet, and I would never leave it. And then for personal reasons, we decided as a family to relocate from New York to Washington, D.C. My husband got a job there, and my mom has been ill for some time, and that is where she and my father live, and sort of saw it as a way to get back, to be closer to family. But I had no intention of leaving my job at HBO. They were very generous and enabled me to commute back and forth. So we moved as a family to Washington, and HBO gave me an apartment in New York, and I would go up on Monday mornings and come back on Thursday nights and work from home on Fridays. And I thought, well, this is kind of perfect because I have the greatest job on the planet that I have no intention of leaving. But my family lives in Washington, so that's great. And I'll just go back and forth and have the best of all possible worlds. So I thought I would do that, forever. And then what I came to realize was that, being a working mom has its challenges under the best of circumstances, but when that full-time job exists in a different city from where your family lives, it's really hard. So I ultimately decided that it's just not who I am as a mother and a wife. I happen to have a husband that I adore. Most people told me at the time, wow, that's a great setup. You mean you spend the whole week in New York by yourself and then you just go home on the weekends? Like, I would love that. It's like, it has some advantages, but mostly for me, it was a whole bunch of disadvantages. So anyway, I jumped off of a cliff, and I was really quite concerned that I was committing really professional suicide because I didn't know what I was going to do in Washington. I love media, I love television, and it just goes to show you that everything in life is timing, and it was just sort of the right place at the right time. There was a new CEO at National Geographic who, unfortunately for many, was getting rid of an entire senior management layer and making a lot of changes. So that was very unfortunate for those people, but for somebody who was looking for a job, it was great. So I joined as the chief marketing officer 5 years ago, and I was happy just to have a job in television in Washington. If I'm being completely honest, I wouldn't have left the head of marketing at HBO for the head of marketing at National Geographic, but I thought, you know what, that's fine. I'll just go home every day at 5. I'm just going to phone in this job, and I'll just be a mom, and it's all going to be great. So what turned out to be a decision that I made solely for personal reasons ended up being the greatest professional chapter of my life, completely unexpected. And 2 years into being in Washington, there was another leadership change, and I was given the CEO job. And, as I often say, I would like to think that if I was still in New York and still at HBO, that I would be doing well and having a great job, but I most certainly would not be running HBO. And so the opportunity to kind of transition to a greater leadership role has been thrilling. So I feel, that was a very long-winded answer, but I feel very grateful. It's not at all what I anticipated, but I couldn't be happier.
We'll come back a bit later on to talk about being a mom and being a TV exec, which we're both in. We have children of almost the same age. And so we had an encounter when you were selling Girl Scout cookies outside our local supermarket.
It was very glamorous.
With my Girl Scout daughter. And so we were like, okay, this is exactly how executives kind of get to make decisions. And we had a good conversation about something very important.
Perfect.
But talk to me about being a marketing person now running a network. Because that's something which in America is starting to happen a lot. And that it's two parallel disciplines in a way. So what does that background give you in terms of running a network?
Yeah, you know, I find that, well, first of all, I had the great fortune of going from one amazing, iconic brand, HBO, to another, I would argue, more amazing, iconic brand in National Geographic. And as a marketing person, you're constantly thinking from the perspective of a consumer, right? It's all about how are you going to break through, how are you going to create a resonant message, and always from the perspective of a consumer. How do I make my product, my service, my brand relevant to the consumer? And you know, you have to think about that when you're making programming too. So I think what I bring is this sort of vigilant focus on the consumer. And you know, also, I think, you know, we're only as good as the storytellers who come and bring their projects to us. And that's something that I really gained an appreciation for at HBO, and it's quite similar as a head of marketing. Even when you're developing big marketing campaigns and you have an amazing team of people, you work with lots of outside, incredible creative talent, and you know, designing a place where you become a port of call for the very best talent is something that makes you be able to do your greatest marketing work and also your greatest work as an executive overseeing programming. I think the biggest change is I was used to just spending money, and now I'm responsible for actually making it. And it's like, oh, I wonder if I would have made all those decisions previously had I known, you know, that I have to be balancing the whole P&L. I found the transition to be quite easy, actually, and I think there's a ton of relevant skill set that you bring to the role, having come from sort of a brand and marketing place.
And you have a brand that is not just a TV network.
Right.
It's way, way more than that.
Yes. In fact, it started, you know, we're a relatively recent TV brand, only 20 years old, but the brand itself is 129 years old.
Before radio. I think that's
radio.
My favorite Nat Geo fact is that it existed as a brand and kind of as a global brand before anyone had figured out radio, which is symbolic really of the importance of it.
Absolutely. You know, it's both an incredible opportunity and help, and it's a bit of a hindrance too, and that's kind of what we're navigating our way through. I mean, I would argue that National Geographic is one of the biggest, most global, iconic, sort of special brands in the world. It's sort of like motherhood. Nobody says anything bad about National Geographic. It has always stood for quality and authenticity. So I feel a tremendous responsibility to live up to the promise and expectations of the National Geographic brand. What we're doing now is seeking to increase its relevance, right? And increase its engagement. So it's not just about, it's sort of from reverence to relevance. I think people have revered the National Geographic brand for so long. What we're about today across all of our business units, not just television, is injecting real relevance into the brand.
And when you took over, you did some really big, brave things. I mean, the figures here that I have is in 2014, National Geographic spent $300 million on 450 hours of television, which is, you know, a good-sized budget for a cable network. What you did was cut down those hours from 450 hours to 150 hours at the same time as you were able to increase the budget to 400 million. And that's that's a huge, huge shift for any network. It's hard to think of, you know, in the British context of anywhere that you go, okay, we're going to radically increase our budget by more than a quarter, and yet we're going to do way, way, way less hours of TV. Talk to people here about what that means.
Bonkers, right? Look, I think that I personally view the risks of not pursuing the strategy that we're pursuing now is far greater than the risks of pursuing this strategy. And just to set the table, what was happening when I joined, we were playing a tonnage game, right? We were producing well over 400 hours of programming. We were very focused on a tonnage play, lots and lots of sort of low-cost reality shows. We were very focused on chasing the success and audiences of Discovery and History, who were seeing a lot of success with that genre of programming. We were not enjoying the same level of success with that programming, and I personally think that's because that's not what people expect from National Geographic. It's not what they come to us for. But in addition, the landscape was already starting to shift, and it's certainly shifted even more dramatically since 2014. And there's simply no way to break through in today's marketplace without being distinctive and without being exceptional. And there was really nothing distinctive or exceptional about what we were doing at the time. So I remember very, very distinctly getting a call from Peter Rice, who's the chairman and CEO of Fox Network Groups. We are a joint venture and always have been between 21st Century Fox and the nonprofit National Geographic Society. We're majority owned by Fox. And I had been in Los Angeles. I'd been on the job maybe 6 months or so in the CEO job. I'd seen Peter in LA. He knew I was getting on a plane the next day, and he called me and he said, I want you to think about something on the plane ride back. And up to that point, I wasn't gratified by the strategy we were pursuing, but I was a first-time CEO, and quite frankly, I just wasn't thinking big enough. So my focus was sort of, how do I make this incrementally better? How can we make this feel more in keeping and aligned with the brand, and hopefully enjoy more success? But I wasn't thinking radically. And he gave me permission to think radically. He said, I want you to get on the plane tomorrow and just think about, if I said to you, let's just blow up the model, forget your budget, forget how many hours your programming model is. What does the HBO of National Geographic look like? And I was like, really? I can think that way? Really? So I said, well, I've spent 14 years at HBO. I know exactly what that looks like. So it was the most exhilarating phone call I'd probably ever gotten. He just gave me license to think big and differently. In fact, it wasn't just license, it was sort of a mandate to think big and differently. So I remember the next day, I literally worked from takeoff to touchdown. It was on a Friday. My son had a bowling birthday party to go to. I offered to take him. I sat in the back corner of the bowling alley and just worked away at sort of what became the very beginnings of this new strategy that we have, which was to do fewer, but bigger and bolder and with greater scale and scope, like big event television, that could break through the culture that felt really distinctive, with greater scale and scope and entertainment value, more global in nature, A-list creative talent, big marketing budgets, something that was very radically different than what our competitors were doing. And so that's the strategy that we're pursuing today. And the vision is really to become, break away from the pack and become the world's leading destination for premium content around genres that make sense for our brand, be it science, be it adventure, be it exploration. And the vision is really to increase the long-term value of this brand. The marketplace is changing so much, and the way we are going to be distributed, it's already changing. It will continue to change, and I think the only brands that will win are brands that are focused on increasing the relevance of that brand, vital brands, exceptional content inside vital brands. Those are the brands that are going to win, and that's what we're focused on.
Let's have a look at one of the examples that you've brought along of that kind of thinking bigger brand. So this is the Long Road Home, which is one of your dramas, because you do drama as well as...
We just started doing drama. We had dabbled in drama. I mean, the lion's share of what we will continue to do will be unscripted and documentary and factual, but we have dabbled in drama, and we dabbled in a really successful way with our first scripted drama series, limited series that we launched this past spring called Genius, which came to us from Ron Howard and Brian Grazer of Imagine Entertainment, based on Walter Isaacson's biography about Albert Einstein. We had the great joy of being able to attract Jeffrey Rush to play Albert Einstein. And so that was our first ever scripted series, and we just this past couple months ago, we got 10 Emmy nominations for that series, which you have to go back 10 years to 2006 to find a network who got double-digit Emmy nominations for their first ever scripted drama, and that was AMC with the first season of Mad Men. So I think we're in quite good company. So we see that as a sign that there is an appetite for scripted from us. We're being very, very curatorial about the types of projects that we are picking. Everything that we are looking at is either fact-based or at least fact-inspired. I like to say that you will not see dragons, as much as I love Game of Thrones, you will not see dragons on National Geographic because they don't exist in real life. So we are focused on telling stories that feel aligned with our brand and have real factual base to them. So Long Road Home is our next scripted drama, another limited series, 8 hours. It is based on a best-selling book of the same name, Long Road Home, by Martha Raddatz, who is ABC in the States. She is the global foreign affairs correspondent for ABC. She's really a pioneer in the news business. And it tells the story of the 1st Cavalry Division of the Army, based out of Fort Hood, Texas, who went to Iraq in 2004 on a peacekeeping mission, or so they thought, and there had been no activity. It was considered the safest place, Sadr City in Iraq. There had been no firefighting in a year. The war had just been declared as being over. They went over there to help with restoration. Horrible ambush. Many people didn't survive, some did. We're telling that story. We can talk about it more. Why don't we show the tape and then we can talk about it.
All Comanche Reds, Red 1, keep your eyes open, boys. Over.
Guys, see what I'm seeing?
Where the hell is everyone? Hold position, over.
I know you're upset, but we talked about this, right? Look, it's a little like football. I'm the team captain, and now it's time for us to go play in the big game.
But you've never been to war before.
Kiss the kids for me.
Two vehicles down. I repeat, we need immediate evac. Over.
Copy that, Red 1. Help is on the way.
Gentlemen, this is a skilled and highly prepared enemy who has coordinated a citywide attack.
We have a Christmas tree!
Since I'm not gonna be here for Christmas this year, I thought maybe we could celebrate early.
A platoon's been attacked.
I am anxious. We are all so anxious.
I don't see any hostiles. Maybe it's over.
No. Now they're just regrouping.
I promise I'd get them back safe. Promised all of them.
I'm gonna need all of this to come back.
Everybody rebound!
Thank you, Lord, for all my wonderful blessings. Bless them for their sacrifice.
Get in! Back up, back up, back up!
I just gotta go over there. I gotta go help some people.
Why?
Those guys in my platoon, they're my family too.
From that trailer, thanks. The series, in each episode, first of all, each episode follows a different character, focuses on a different character. And we switch between the battle that's going on in Iraq and what's happening on the home front. And so while this story chronicles a very specific battle of an American troop, it's really a universal story about brotherhood and family and bonds. And we went to great pains to tell this story in a truly National Geographic way, really authentic. We have 2 or 3 of the soldiers, surviving soldiers who lived through this ordeal as consultants on the show. We shot, all of our actors and producers lived on the base in Fort Hood, Texas, where this troop was deployed from. They lived in military housing, officer housing, so they weren't really slumming it, but they were sort of slumming it relative to what actors do. We've gone to great pains we feel a tremendous responsibility, as did the actors, to get this story right, and we're so excited about it. It's really, really strong.
I have one question come through specifically from the app, and somebody asks, that this looks like it will play really well in the US, but feels less of a global story. Is that something that, how do you balance between the global ambitions of National Geographic and also the fact that you're an American network as well as a global network?
Yeah, look, we're very focused on identifying and developing stories that we think will resonate globally. And I think this one will. Again, while it does focus on an American Army troop, as I said, I think that the underlying themes are incredibly universal. And it really is a story. It's a bit like if you saw American Sniper, where you are, again, going back and forth between what's happening on the battlefield and these very universal themes of family and sacrifice and loyalty and brotherhood that I think transcend geographical boundaries.
So in terms of looking for your bigger, better landmarks, you have an eye to it being a global story, it having emotional connection across the world.
Yes.
But what else? I'm sure there's people in the audience here who are thinking, I could make one of those.
Great.
How would you describe what you're looking for when you decide to do either a factual or a scripted show?
Yeah. So I think it goes back to, our brand is our compass, right? So it has to feel from a storytelling perspective that the underlying themes or the genre that we're tackling feels right for National Geographic. And then we're looking for these stories that have universal themes that can travel all over the world. The lion's share of what we're producing are global commissions. So all of our big events are global, be they drama or factual. Scale, scope, entertainment value. We want A-list talent. It's really about high quality. And I think quality, as long as we keep our compass pointed towards the North Star of quality, I think we can find that we will win and we will find those stories that will work everywhere around the world.
I think we have another clip of something else, of One Strange Rock.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that. That's the show we're doing together. So One Strange Rock is I don't even know how to describe it. It's sort of this epic new take on science and natural history that we are producing with Jane and her brilliant team at Newtopia, a lot of BBC exiles that she has pulled together for this project. And we've paired Jane and Newtopia with the brilliant, acclaimed filmmaker Darren Aronofsky, which is his first foray into television. And I think this is a perfect example and very emblematic of the type of ambitions that we have. It's really ambitious creatively. It is, ultimately, it's about the story of One Strange Rock, which refers to the rock we live on, Earth, and how Earth came to be, and sort of all of the how fragile and interconnected its systems are, and what a strange rock that we live on. We're filming for 100 weeks around the world, I think 40 different countries from outer space as well. And what's interesting, and we're going to show you a tape, although you don't see this in the tape, we are using astronauts, as real-life astronauts, as our storytellers. Because interestingly, if you think about it, they're the only people who ever have a perspective on this rock that we live on that most of us will never have, because they have looked at it from a distance. So we're so excited about this. This is one of these big, epic, very, very ambitious swings, absolutely global in nature. And I don't think anybody has ever really done something like this before.
The challenge that you set the team at Newtopia was tell this story in a completely new way, which is a bit like this, very much a mirror of the challenge that Peter Rice set to you, which is how can you do something that is outside the usual ways that these stories are told and bring elements and storytelling together in a different kind of combination. But let's have a look at the clip.
And before we play it, I should just say, because it almost bears calling out, everything you see in this tape has been originally shot for One Strange Rock. It almost just looks like stock footage, because it's sort of hard to believe. It's so breathtaking. But everything that you see here was shot originally for this series. So yeah, let's take a look.
So with One Strange Rock, that's another different kind of project that is, again, fits into your
I think it's perfectly emblematic of our strategy. Big global event television, really distinctive in the marketplace, unbelievable talent mashed together to create something totally new. we joke, so Darren Aronofsky has a film coming out, Mother, that is actually premiering at the Toronto Film Festival. And in the time that we're still shooting and producing One Strange Rock with him and with you all, he will have shot and released an entire feature film. And we're still at work.
We're still filming.
We're still filming. But I love it. I think it's, to me, it's probably the best example of our new strategy, and it'll be a big marketing push for us all around the world.
Somebody on the asked, your mandate is super ambitious, but do you need to have an A-list star attached before you pitch to National Geographic? Because that, I think, feels like, how can you start off if you have to have Darren Aronofsky signed up?
Yeah, no, the answer to that is no. And I also think the idea isn't just to slap an A-list star into something. That, I think that has been sort of misconstrued in the marketplace, because we've gotten pitches. It's like, here's the idea, and oh, by the way, we'll just get this talent attached as an executive producer. It's sort of not what it's about. It's really finding, there was a specific reason that we wanted to go after Darren Aronofsky on this particular series, right? I mean, he's sort of this incredible creative visionary, and bringing that sensibility to a genre that has been done a million times was a very deliberate decision. Morgan Freeman, the highest rated series that we've launched since we embarked on this new journey, was The Story of God with Morgan Freeman. That was not, let's just slap Morgan Freeman's name associated with something. He's basically in every frame of that series for us, and we have a new show we can talk about that we're doing with him. So we want to work with A-list talent, both behind and in front of the camera, because we want to tell the best stories we can. But that's not about just for a vanity play or just for publicity. It's because we want to tell the best stories and work with the very best people. That's how you tell the best stories. So it's not enough, it's not a requirement, and it's also not enough to just have a name attached. It has to feel, there's a real creative reason that a person would be attached.
And it's fair to say that with One Strange Rock, we pitched you the series without Darren.
Yes.
And Darren then was part of the process.
Was part of the sort of, how do we take this to the next level and do something really, really fresh and different?
And then the other big aspect was the astronauts. And so which again emerged in the process of creatively doing the show, which is, who's going to tell the story? And somebody on the team had this brilliant kind of moment where they were like, it needs to be astronauts. And we were all like, wow, yes.
Had this great moment. We have in the States the big advertising upfront, so once a year where you sort of present your new slate of programming to the advertising community. And we had our event in the spring, and One Strange Rock was one of the shows that we presented. And you often card out your talent. And we had lots of fancy people. We had Ron Howard and Brian Grazer, and we had Jeffrey Rush, and we had very acclaimed documentary filmmakers. And we also had the NASA, and we had Morgan Freeman, and we had the NASA astronauts, many of the astronauts that were featured in One Strange Rock. And the neatest thing for us all to see, was how much more interested the audience was in meeting the astronauts than they were any of the Hollywood stars. And in fact, all the Hollywood stars couldn't get enough of meeting the astronauts. So I thought, this is a great National Geographic moment. It restores my faith in humanity. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So on that restoring your faith in humanity point, one of the really interesting things about the position you're in is that you have a society that was created in 1888, before radio, and you also have Fox, and the Murdochs, and that seems like a strange set of bedfellows. I think that when the deal happened for Fox to take a greater position in the National Geographic family, a lot of people were like, wow, does that mean that no one's ever going to mention climate change now? Or does that mean that Rupert Murdoch is somehow going to use National Geographic for his political agenda?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, we get that question a lot. So first I would say no to that. 21st Century Fox and National Geographic have been partners since the beginning of the television network. So when the television network launched, it launched as a global network. I mean, as a joint venture between Fox and National Geographic. So we've been partners those brands have been partners for 20 years. What you just referenced is just under 2 years ago, 21st Century Fox increased its investment in National Geographic with the formation of National Geographic Partners. So now the joint venture doesn't just include the global television business, it includes all of the media assets under the National Geographic umbrella. So the print and digital magazine, the travel and expeditions business, children's media, the massive digital footprint, an events business, a books division, are all part of National Geographic Partners, this expanded joint venture between 21st Century Fox and the Society. And what I would say to that is a couple things. First of all, the Murdochs are lovers of this brand. That is why they have increased the investment. The reason we are able to pursue this bold and ambitious strategy is because of the increased investment and the belief in and the power of this brand that they have. So, and under no circumstances has anybody in the 5 years that I've been there, has a Murdoch or anyone for that matter called and said, you have to do this program, you can't do this program. You know, after the expanded joint venture was when we launched Before the Flood, which was our very successful documentary about climate change from Leonardo DiCaprio and Fisher Stevens, which over 60 million people around the world saw. We released it commercial free on every platform for free to make sure as many people could see it as possible, and nobody from Fox stopped us from doing that. So they are great supporters, Fox, of what we're doing. And all they are doing is increasing their support of and investment in this brand. So, and it's interesting because on the surface, you might think that the philosophies are different, but when it comes to National Geographic, they're not at all different.
And James Murdoch himself is a passionate environmentalist.
He is. He and his wife are passionate environmentalists. He is an avid reader of the magazine and has been since he is a child. You know, we, both Lachlan and James, sit on our board of directors. And, you know, relatively speaking, if you look at the portfolio of 21st Century Fox from a financial perspective, National Geographic is tiny, but we enjoy an outsized level of engagement from James, particularly, and Lachlan, because of their belief in this brand and their increased investment in National Geographic and the bringing together of all of these assets under National Geographic Partners portfolio has really done two things. One, it has ensured the long-term vitality of the nonprofit National Geographic Society. They now have an endowment of over $1 billion. They're actively involved in conservation and research and science and exploration. So that investment from the Murdochs has ensured their vitality forever, which is really a remarkable thing. 27% of all of our proceeds at National Geographic Partners goes back to the National Geographic Society to continue to support their efforts in making the world a better place. So that's an amazing thing that Fox has done for National Geographic. And also bringing together all of these assets enable us to compete very differently. I would not want to be going at this strategy just as a television business, but because we can harness the full power of the National Geographic portfolio, the magazine, the books, this incredible digital footprint, we reach over 730 million consumers every single month around the world when you take all of our touch points in aggregate. That is massive. So when we launched One Strange Rock, when we launched Mars, you know, Mars was not just a television series. This was a hybrid show that we launched last year from Imagine Entertainment. It was half scripted, half documentary. And there was a cover story in the magazine. There were 2 children's books. There was an adult book. There was massive bespoke digital content. There were events and speaker series. So, you know, it really enables us to amplify our storytelling across multiple platforms, which gives us a distinct advantage to compete. So there was both a business reason and I think an altruistic reason that investment was made.
And talk about your digital strategy, because your National Geographic is astoundingly successful on Instagram and Snapchat and in places where it's you and the Kardashians, I think, on Instagram.
Yes, so we are the #1 non-celebrity brand on Instagram and in social. And yeah, the rankings are like the Kardashians, Selena Gomez, and National Geographic. So if I do nothing else right, I'm determined to unseat, much to my daughter's chagrin, because she's a big Selena Gomez fan, but much to my daughter's chagrin, we're going to try to unseat Selena. So we have this amazing, if you don't follow us on Instagram, you really should. We sort of hand over the keys to National Geographic photographers, and it's sort of the most awe-inspiring feed you could have. So we have this amazing footprint. We reached over 350 million people on social all around the world. So, when we're launching these big groundbreaking television shows, we're thinking at the earliest stages, before we even greenlight, is sort of how will we be able to extend this storytelling across platforms? So, what can we be doing that's really distinct and social? What should the magazine be doing? What can the kids media be doing? So that is something that we're thinking about, from a 360-degree perspective right out of the gate. And the way we look at success, too. I mean, it's sort of influencing kind of our metrics for success. So it's no longer just about aggregating audience on television. It's sort of how do we drive engagement and audience across all of these different platforms. And that's really exciting, and also I think just gives us a distinct competitive advantage because it's so hard to break through. But if you can harness that reach across all of those platforms for the stories that you're telling and to raise the profile of your brand, you have a much better shot.
I mean, this is an audience question here. Somebody is asking how much you're looking to the future beyond linear TV, and whether you think linear TV in the world has a future, or are we actually looking beyond that? Yeah,
I think everybody's looking beyond that. I mean, linear television is still here to stay, so we're kind of living in that world where it's still important to drive audience. But there's no question that we and others are playing the long game, and that's why I feel that pursuing this strategy that we're pursuing now is so critical, because in the end, it's about creating content that people perceive as worth paying for. One way or the other, people are going to pay for content, and it's either going to be via a traditional ecosystem that we all live in, or it's going to be a smaller ecosystem and skinny bundles, or it's going to be direct to consumer. But either way, I think this strategy is about shoring ourselves up for the long game, whatever that long game is. Ultimately, I'm sort of platform agnostic, and I think great content is platform agnostic. I just want this brand, to create content that is exceptional, that is perceived as worth paying for, that is distinctive, so that we are well positioned for whatever that future holds.
A lot of people, I'm seeing a lot of questions coming up here about how you're interacting with potential partners, with production companies, in terms of buying rights, in terms of doing co-productions. I think there's a lot of people here who would like to be making big shows for you, but who would also perhaps like to
retain some rights.
To retain some rights.
Right. I mean, our focus, we are focused on global commissions. We want to own our shows, and we want to be able to exploit them all around the world. National Geographic Channel is in 171 countries around the world, and so all of these big events that we are producing, like One Strange Rock, like Long Road Home, like Genius, are premiering all around the world. That's not to say that we aren't open to other ideas. So we did a co-production with Channel 4, actually, on a 4-part drama called The State from Peter Kosminski, which is just premiering on Channel 4 now and will air on National Geographic Channel every place else around the world except for the UK. So it's not a hard and fast rule that the answer is never, but our focus is definitely on global.
But you do also commission
local. We do. And you can talk to Hamish Maikura, who's right there in the audience. We have a team here under Hamish who is focused on not just finding great storytellers and great stories from production companies outside the US that could be global commissions, but also we do continue to commission some programming locally all around the world, in Europe, in Asia, in Latin America. So that's certainly not been replaced entirely by what we're doing, but a large majority of our dollars are being spent on these big global event shows.
And just before we open it purely to questions, I did want to go back to where we kind of started in this conversation. You're talking about moving to DC with your family and all of that. It's striking that when you look at figures for the gender of executives, 71% of US executives are still men. Yeah. And in Britain, there's recently been this big moment when salaries were revealed and suddenly everyone looked again at, have we actually come as far as we thought we were all coming in terms of men and women in television? What's your perspective on all of that?
Well, what's interesting is 2/3 of the executive team at National Geographic are women, which is sort of amazing. So I go to work every day in Washington with an amazing leadership team of very strong, accomplished, high-achieving women. So I run the television business. The editor-in-chief of the magazine is a woman. The woman who's running our digital business, the person who's running our digital business is a woman. The person who's running our consumer products business is a woman. So our chief marketing officer is a woman. So yeah, 2/3 of the executive team is women. So I certainly don't feel it every day, but there's no question as you look across the landscape that we could do better. You know, I was asked this question recently, you know, what is it like to be a female CEO? And if I'm being perfectly honest, I've really never thought about it one way or the other, you know, as being a woman helped or hindered me. It's sort of never been an issue for me. I'll never forget when I was the week before I was going to start my very first job. I was 21 years old. I moved to New York City to work in an ad agency, and my very wise father sent me handwritten on a legal yellow pad of paper, like the 30 things that I should think about before I enter the workforce. And there's all these great little nuggets that I still use today. And the last one was, he said, you know, you are going to encounter lots of politics and bureaucracy and people that are going to want to stand in your way. Just put your head down and remember that no one can deny good work. And that was sort of this message of like, it doesn't matter who you, just do great work and it will get noticed. And so that's sort of what I've always believed would be the case. And I've had the great fortune of not feeling that I've been hindered in any way. But I will say when I got this job as CEO, I was amazed at the number of emails that I got from young women at National Geographic, at HBO that I used to work with, across 21st Century Fox, who said to me, like, it's so great to see a woman get this job and a mother get this job. And it was sort of, I mean, I'm kind of embarrassed to say that I hadn't really thought about it before, but getting that type of feedback was really interesting and actually made me feel this sort of sense of responsibility somehow to be thinking about this in a way that I hadn't before. So look, I look across the industry and know we need to do better. I feel we need to do better even in the creative choices we make. You know, more women showrunners, more women directors. But I personally have never felt hindered. I've been given great opportunities. And like I said, you know, when I look across the people with whom I work, there's tons of amazing women doing amazing things. So, yeah. But it is hard to juggle. I mean, the mom thing is hard to juggle. I'm not going to lie. We talk about this all the time. And, you know, there's been many calls that Jane and I have had when she's sort of watching her daughter at a horse, what is it, a match? What do you call it? A horse show? Show? Okay, you know, and I'm on the side of the lacrosse field watching my son, you know, multitask. So, you know, I often say if there was one superpower that I could have and invent, it would be that I could be in two places at one time, because that's the hardest thing. But I feel very grateful that, you know, I'm able to, I have an amazing husband and partner. I have the financial means to have help. I mean, the people that I really respect the most are working single moms. You know, those are the people that it's hard to balance. Me, it's, you know, you do your best, you hope, you have to get comfortable with the 80% solution. And you have to hope that you giving 80% is better than most people's 110%, because that's really all you can do. And I just really try not to miss the important moments. I miss a lot of moments, but I try really hard not to miss the important moments at home, so, yeah.
And on that great point, questions from the audience. I've also got questions coming in through here, but anyone from the audience who wants, we've got microphones over there and over there. Yeah.
Hi, Martin Haynes from Kudos. Congratulations on the state. I think it's a a terrific
Have you watched any
piece
of
of
it?
work. I have, yeah. I've watched most of it.
Oh, good.
So I was just curious about, how that came about and your involvement in it, and I can see that it plays into the global sensibility, and it's obviously fact-based. I'd just be interested to know how that came about and what your appetite for doing sort of co-production of that nature is going forward.
Yeah, we definitely have an appetite. I mean, as I said, we'd prefer to, commission something globally. Peter Kosminski is such an incredible talent. We have a lot of documentaries and a lot of fact-based shows that we've done around, ISIS, the fall of Syria, the rise of ISIS. It's, one of the most globally urgent and pressing issues facing the world, and we have a long history at National Geographic of telling those types of stories. And we certainly don't shy away from telling provocative, challenging stories, which Watching the State is. My head of scripted is a woman named Carolyn Bernstein, who's joined about 18 months ago. She's based in LA, and she sort of, in the same way that I went on a kind of a charm offensive throughout the creative communities, talking about the types of things that we were looking for, she did the same thing, and knew Peter Kosminski and knew some of the executives at Channel 4, and they came to us with that project. And so, like I said, we'd prefer something global. We have it. We are exploiting that in every country except for the UK. We just did a documentary with Sebastian Junger, who's one of the foremost documentary filmmakers, called Hell on Earth, which really was all about the fall of Syria and the rise of ISIS. And so, being able to tell that story of what it's like in ISIS from the inside. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. It's not an easy watch. And we felt very comfortable and confident in our conversations with Peter about the amount of research that went into telling those stories based on lots of first-person accounts. That was really important to us, that we're not going to tell a sensationalized version of that story, but like a really it almost plays like a documentary, in a way. So we're very proud to be doing that series with them, and we haven't aired it. We haven't broadcast it. It's broadcast first here. We haven't aired it any place else outside of the UK. So we'll see.
Any other questions from the audience? I've got a lot here, but anybody else? Okay, there's a question here. Somebody asked very bluntly, do ratings matter to you?
Oh, that's a good question. Look, they definitely matter because we're still living in a linear television world. I mean, we're still in the business of audience. I think what has changed is that it's not the only thing that matters. We are very focused on raising the profile of our brand, which ultimately helps you drive revenue. If you raise the profile of the brand among advertisers, among distributors, that can really translate into revenue. And going back to kind of the full portfolio that is National Geographic Partners, we're very focused on driving audience across the entire portfolio, across all platforms. So we're not just looking at the audience that we generate on linear, we're looking at the audience and the engagement that we drive in digital, in social, in other places. So audience does still matter. Fortunately, but it's we're in a time of transition. It's hard. It's really hard. But we have, since we embarked on this journey, and we've only launched this new strategy about 9 months ago. We've talked about it for a couple years, but we really only launched shows that have been born out of this vision in November. And we've premiered our top 3 series of all time, Story of God with Morgan Freeman, and Mars and Genius. So, we're looking at that for sure, but we're encouraged by lots of other signs outside of ratings.
Just a quick question from me too. How hard is it to turn a big ship like National Geographic? This strategy that you're doing is really, really radical.
It is.
How difficult
is that? It's hard. It's really hard. Transformational change doesn't happen overnight. And I am a person who, I like immediate gratification, so it's really hard for me. Like, I just want to flip the switch and have it all work. And it takes patience. You even said to me once, because you've been on the network side, like, it takes longer than anybody anticipates. So it's hard. We've we see a lot of really encouraging signs. As I said, we've premiered the top 3 series of all time. We've attracted a broader, more upscale audience. More women are watching National Geographic than ever before. We've raised our profile in the industry. As I mentioned, we've got more Emmy nominations than we've ever had. We premiered 5 projects at the Tribeca Film Festival this spring. Huge step ups creatively, which is really what I'm looking for too, like feeling really good about the quality. But we've also swung and missed. I mean, not everything has worked, and transitioning an audience, which is what we're trying to do, takes time. And some things are going to work and some things aren't going to work. But the great thing is that 21st Century Fox and the National Geographic Society, our corporate parents, are incredibly supportive of this vision and said from the very, very beginning that this is about playing the long game. So, if all we cared about was get as the highest ratings you possibly can on the linear channel, I would just keep running Drugs Inc. and Alaska State Troopers, 24/7. That would be the right strategy. That's not what we're going for. So yeah, it's hard. But as I said, first of all, just personally, it's a much more gratifying experience as a leader to sort of lead through transformational change than through incremental change. It's incredibly exhilarating. It's hard, but it's exhilarating. And I think that it's energizing for the staff and the team and our outside partners to be a part of this and to try to win with this strategy. But it's not going to happen overnight.
Okay, question back there.
Hi. I wanted to ask a little bit more about your sort of digital thinking and what you think around that. So, you talk about Instagram and Facebook and stuff. With your marketing background, do you mainly see that as a marketing tool rather than a sort of a content distribution tool, given that, as most of us know who are working this, that getting the platforms to actually share their revenue is very difficult? And then secondly, we know that the audience is online and the audiences that YouTube get, and I think Jon Snow alluded to that in his speech yesterday, that the audience is over there, but the money is over here. Mm-hmm. Do you see a tipping point in that in the sort of near future?
I think that's the key question everybody's trying to figure out, is sort of how to monetize all of these digital eyeballs. And I think, for a long time, these digital platforms were purely marketing and promotional, and we're still using them for that. But Rachel Weber, who runs our digital business at National Geographic, is also very focused on driving revenue across these platforms. So I think it's both promotional, but also revenue generating. And we're looking at creating original content, original series. We're part of Facebook's new Watch platform, so we're creating wholly original series, some of which are related to or born out of long-form shows that we're doing on television, and some are completely unique, and there's a rev share that we're doing there. So I think we're seeing that shift. Certainly the economics still favor the traditional platforms, but I think as time goes on, that will continue to shift. And that's the key question, is how do you monetize all of these eyeballs that particularly we are getting?
And I have time for one last question, which comes from somebody in the audience, which is, what else was on your dad's list?
Oh, that's great. Okay. Dress for the job you want, not the job you have. So that was good advice for a 21-year-old. Does that really matter? So yes. The latest you should ever be to a meeting is on time. I violate that one all the time, but it's a great ambition to have. And then another one that I loved was in every job, find somebody really inspiring that you can learn from. So those were some of the nuggets. Pretty good. He's a very smart man.
I think we might have to see your dad's list.
I should really publish my dad's list.
I think
I really should.
Whoever's from broadcast here, or maybe on the maybe on the app, we should actually have Courtney's dad's list, because I kind of feel that that's something that perhaps just not you should have, but we should all have.
Share it. Yes. Jay Friedman. He's a wise man. Yeah.
Well, we're nearly out of time, so I'm just going to say thank you, Courtney.
Thank you, Jane, so much. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.